Why did the Buddha think that pilgrimage was important? He recommended going on pilgrimage to connect with him after he was gone. And that's useful for the disciples whom were so illuminated by the presence of the Buddha a day after he died, but also for all of us 2,500 years later. The opportunity to go on pilgrimage is the opportunity to come face to face with the Buddha himself and his legacy. And I think that is an unbelievable opportunity in modern times, because we have this notion that the Buddha was some guy back in history, but the Buddha is living right now and has made a firm recommendation and pledge that we join him and that we meet him and that we become him, we become awake. And that's what a pilgrimage is really designed to do. Why is going on pilgrimage so relevant to us right now in modern times? I can think of so many reasons for that, not the least of which is that we have become so myopic and materialistic in our view that breaking out of that necessarily requires some radical shift. And what greater radical shift can there be than to move out of the little micro bubbles of your own culture and into another person's culture, stepping into another person's perspective or shoes in order to take a good look back at yourself. And when you take 20 or 30 people on pilgrimage, you move them out of their comfort zone, but you also move them out of their cultural milieu so that they can take a very refreshing perspective on the belief systems that they have been indoctrinated to that are, in my estimation, part of the very fabric of their sickness. And so pilgrimage is like a medicine because it asks us to get out of our comfort zone and to reevaluate our entire belief system and our entire notion of how the world should be. Why did I go on pilgrimage? I didn't know I was going on pilgrimage. Sometimes you go on pilgrimage unbeknownst to you. And when I was 20, I was looking for something and I didn't know what it was. I just knew I wasn't getting it at home. I wasn't getting it in the school. I wasn't getting it in my culture. And I had originally, when I was 15 or 16 in high school, seen some very, very beautiful black and white photographs of yogis on the Ganges. And they were doing postures and they were meditating on the banks of the Ganges. And I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what a sadhu was. All I knew is it spoke to something so deep in me, and it drew me in like a magnet. And it made such an impression, and like a seed, exactly 8 years later, I was on those banks of that Ganges with those yogis. I had made my way to India. I had made my way to Varanasi, the great holy city of Shiva in northern India, and from there ventured to Bodh Gaya, which is the center, ground zero of the awakening movement, because that is where the Buddha sat down and discovered the true nature of reality. It is now a modern day Mecca of Buddhism, where people from all over the Buddhist world go to congregate for prayers and prostrations and to make offerings, and in a way to reconnect with their own Buddha nature within. And so I had made my way there kind of led by some inner calling, but at the time didn't really know what I was getting into. What's so special about Sri Lanka? In a way, there are many, many cities and countries in the Buddhist world where there are sacred sites that have been imbued with power and meaning, and the dedication and devotion and heart commitment of pilgrims and saints and sages for centuries. And Sri Lanka happens to be a sacred island, and it is one of the special unique characteristics is that it became a repository for the Buddhist teachings that migrated south from northern India and became a kind of safe haven within the confines of this island. And for centuries, the Dharma was kept pure there, where it was already beginning to be destroyed in its homeland of origin. And so Sri Lanka over the centuries became like one of the greatest strongholds of Buddhist knowledge and Buddhist education and meditation and the transmission directly from the Buddha. And so now when you venture to Sri Lanka, you're talking about visiting sites that the Buddha himself visited on 3 separate occasions, and from the time of the Buddha himself onwards became sites of incredible power and veneration and enormous collection of interest. And so when we go there in modern times, what we are doing is tapping the stream of this incredible potency and becoming the recent iterations of pilgrims who have ventured to the sacred island of Sri Lanka. So what are the practices that we'll be doing in Sri Lanka? Essentially, the entire practice of Dharma can be condensed into 2 active ingredients. One is to purify negativities, and the other is to cultivate virtue. And what's so special and significant about doing those 2 things on pilgrimage is that you're doing them amidst a sacred site that's imbued with energy and meaning and profundity. And so we will be really self-evaluating all the harmful tendencies and karmic propensities in our mind and trying to decrease them. And those loving instincts and compassionate instincts and virtues, we will be trying to amplify them as a group set amidst these beautiful, powerful places in Sri Lanka. So is it going to be all work and no play in Sri Lanka? Absolutely not. Sri Lanka is one of the most beautiful places that anyone could hope to visit on the planet. And it has probably some of the most beautiful people, sweet, kind-hearted, lovely, buttery people. And when I was there 21 years ago as a youngster, I remember thinking to myself that I had found the Garden of Eden. And once you find the Garden of Eden and you're surrounded by really sweet, lovely people, you can't help yourself but enjoy yourself. And so I think it's really important that people remember that when you're on pilgrimage, you work really hard. You try to work with your mind, cultivate virtue, and you'll be making your offerings, and you'll be doing your Dharma practice. But it's all within the context of enjoyment and really feeling at home and at peace within yourself, but also with the local people and their beautiful, beautiful island.